Because to me, you cannot run a business with inaccurate forecasts. You cannot run a business with hope casting, and you definitely cannot run a business with lie casting. Philosophy is essentially twofold. Excuse me. The first one is, data based. I was a military intelligence analyst, so I'm an analyst at heart. It'll be a core pillar of things I do, no matter what I do. So that can be applied in this case to sales operations and forecasting. And the second thing is just an open and honest culture, which is really important to be able to do this properly.
Fantastic. I love that answer. Okay, so going to our theme of forecasting, what forecasting processes have you built or any processes that you're looking to build? Because I know you've come into this new role. What would you say are the key elements?
Yeah, I think the most instrumental kind of process that I'm super excited to build is to have a program that really surrounds forecasting and sees it as a holistic system. So you'll have a tech stack and a set of rules, the processes, and then a group of people. And those three together are really providing that environment to have that successful forecasting. So for example, you could have a set of visualizations that outline kind of the reps forecast against the manager's forecast, and that would be kind of the tech stack. And then have an environment in which you can talk about them openly and honestly, and then ultimately, from our side, the ops side, ways to provide help. And so from an ops perspective, you can say, well, I'll just give you an example. If we see that the manager is calling ahead of their AEs, they're saying something like, maybe I'm committing $10 million, and I can look at the AEs and I can say, well, your AEs are saying they only are committing 8 million. Then it gives us a way to talk about it and ask really good questions and say, why is that? And then the managers can really defend their position. Well, I actually think X, Y, Z deals are going to hit. I feel confident about that. I think that this is actually going to book at a higher price. They're going to expand, etc. And then it goes the other way around too. So why are you calling behind your reps? Your reps are saying they are, going towards $12 million, and you're saying, well, you're only saying 9. Why is that? And so these are really good open conversations to be able to really nail in kind of how you end the quarter.
Fantastic. Okay. So when you're doing your forecasts, what are the 3 outcomes that you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, so the most important thing about forecasting as a leader is just essentially this one question. Do you bring or achieve what you say you're going to achieve? It has nothing to do with your quota. It has nothing to do with the target. When you say you're going to bring in 10 million, do you really mean you're going to bring in 10 million? And that is the one true outcome that we want for a forecast. And it doesn't matter if you're ahead. If you say you're going to bring in 10 and you bring in 15, I will have questions for you. Because to me, you cannot run a business with inaccurate forecasts. You cannot run a business with hope casting, and you definitely cannot run a business with lie casting. We are forecasting. And so to that end, right, there's really just the one important question. The second important thing is because of that, then I'm looking for accuracy. And we actually measure this every quarter. So we have a week 5 accuracy forecast and a week 10 forecast. And so what I see is at week 5, if you're forecasting an X number, I will measure that against how you end and see how that ended and how close that number is. And I do that at week 10 as well, before the quarter ends. And what that tells me is by week 10, you should really know and nail down what your number is. And that is a true mark of a very good forecaster and leader in your own business. If you're way off at week 10, again, we will have conversations, because I would like you to be very truthful, very honest with that forecast. And that's why that's the kind of most important thing um, in forecasting is that accuracy. And the last, of course, is did you achieve your target, which to me is actually a distant third. Like if you were way below or way ahead of what your quota um, is less important to me than how accurate you were, because again, I value truthfulness and honesty above that. So
Fantastic. So before we started recording, you did talk about like this whole idea of having a great culture and focusing on the people. Could you talk to me more about that? Because I can imagine if you're saying, okay, let's have this conversation. Why haven't you hit your number? How do you build this
mhm.
really great culture there?
uh, I mean, it's just being very truthful and vulnerable on my side. So think about it from the sales operations perspective.
Mhm,
We are also reporting to the business how the team will do or how the whole business will do. And so if we report to finance and say, hey, we think we're going to bring in that 50 million or that $100 million number, and then finance says, well, you only brought in 80, that
mhm,
that gives us a sense of vulnerability. And so that's what that really means is I would like to share that with the reps and say, please help me be our best, and we will help you be your best by being just transparent up and down, the levels. And because I am wholly dependent on your forecast to be able to myself report the same numbers.
mhm,
And so I am relying on you because I do not know what that is. You know, the field knows. And so once you kind of have that genuine, like kind of vulnerability, honesty across all these levels,
mhm,
then I will consider actually that a success. If you can keep that
mm,
culture, that forecast then becomes the most truthful thing you can have and own in the company. So
Okay.
and yeah, and it just kind of cascades up and down. And your relationships are better if
Mhm,
reps are struggling. We would be able to ask them how we can help. Maybe if the business as a whole is struggling, we can provide maybe a spiff or some incentive to be able to perform and generate some more revenue.
mhm,
These are more strategic, more focused conversations than simple questions like why did you miss your quota,
mhm,
or why is your forecasting wrong. Those are
mhm.
just kind of more dead end, kind of blunt questions compared to the kinds of conversations we can have if we were open and transparent. And so I try to lead the way in that.
Brilliant. Okay. Who do you think has the greatest influence in the forecast? Would you say it's going to be the reps?
They do, right?
They
And
do.
so they do have quite a degree of influence. And so one of the things that we like to do is again that culture, the truth that gives us an avenue to help succeed. Um, and and essentially, the second side of that coin is we know that reps have background in other areas in other companies that they've done things a certain way.
Mhm,
And if we were to lead in a different way and provide kind of a different path that allows them to maybe shave away some behaviors that they've had before,
mm,
then that would also have a really good influence, right? And so, but again, um, it's more like a culture of a servant leadership, a culture of
mhm,
vulnerability in which we do acknowledge that you have the greatest influence in this forecast. What we will take your number as the source of truth.
mhm,
And so you do please treat that number with respect because you do have that greatest influence, right?
mhm. Yeah, it's like you have the greatest influence, and let's try and figure out what you're influenced by. Are you honest?
Exactly.
I love that.
Yes. Please take this seriously.
Yeah, please. Okay. So think about your current forecasting process, Adam. How long did it take you to build the current process that you've got now? And is there anything that you would do differently if you are able to start again? Maybe not in this situation because you're already starting new, but thinking back
Mhm.
to previous situations or anything that applies here.
Yeah, and to your point, we are still new, we're still learning, and I
Hmm.
think it's a startup company, it's a unicorn. It's so it's great and exciting.
Hmm.
Yeah, check out the press release about our funding raise, and so it's super cool. But at the enterprise level, we're used to deal-based forecasting, and that's actually quite simple. We just look at every deal individually and count it, whether or not it's in or not, right? And so
Hmm.
um, one of the things that we will need to do is to be adaptive and change as the company changes. And so as we grow, I think we will kind of deal with more of that pipeline, like kind of probabilistic approaches in your
Hmm.
pipe and forecast. And so to that point, right, I think from scratch, there are two things that are just top of mind when that pertains to this question. One is be agile and be willing to change, because as a company grows, it just inherently changes. And
Hmm.
if you want, you can just freeze time and say, okay, we're not going to change anything. Well, that also means that you're not going to grow either. It means that we're going to stay a $15 million company. And that means that we're not going to be $100 million company. It means that we're not going to maybe become $1 billion company, because you just froze time. And so to that degree, the other side of that is
Hmm.
the second point, which is be scale aware. And so what I mean by that is approach things as though they were going to grow and scale. And so
Hmm.
those are the types of things that are just, for me, I know that I will have to be dealing with starting from scratch. And so it's as if as things change, you're just kind of starting over and over and again and iterating in what things you're doing. And so those two will help me um, kind of give me that North Star, right? It's
Hmm.
like if I'm always willing to change and I'm always scale aware, then does it matter if we're starting from scratch or bringing elements along that we will continue? It's going to be a permutation of those things that
Hmm.
really bring the company forward.
Hmm. Do you have any suggestions? So do you have like a process or a cadence that you'd follow to help you with this agility, to help you kind of have those moments where you're able to keep track of what's going on and seeing whether you're able to change anything?
Yeah, so a lot of it is just, communicate again.
Hmm.
I communicate to my boss. Here's what I think I'm doing. Here's what I think we should do. So these
Hmm.
are the processes I'm thinking up. How best do you want to deploy them?
Hmm.
In terms of kind of like the regional directors or area VPs, the same thing. Just be a very tight communication and process.
Hmm.
Be transparent about things that you're doing,
Hmm.
because they do affect the field. And the last thing you'd want to do is to make a change and have something just question why that change occurred.
Hmm.
And at the sales operations level, it totally makes sense. But if you didn't communicate that, that's not going to be a very good relationship with ultimately your customers. So my customers are the RDs, the field, and the reps ultimately. And so you want to serve them in
Hmm.
the best way possible. And so clear rules in communication, what the meanings are when you forecast it, right? So what does
Hmm.
commit mean in pipeline? And it doesn't matter what um, what kind of terminology you use, right?
Hmm.
They things mean something, and so just be clear about them. It doesn't matter what you use again, and then to that point, open, honest culture.
Got it. Brilliant. Okay. Adam, last question for you. So, as you know, with forecasting and with anything in life, there's a massive human element to it. We all are very resistant to change. So, what would you say the key elements are for driving adoption of a new forecasting process?
Yeah, the adoption is really first setting the standards. So again,
Mhm.
I'm just going to double tap on outlining the rules. That way, everybody has kind of the same understanding. I think that's the most important thing, because again, if you say we pick 10 different reps from 10 different companies, bring them all into one company, there's probably 10 different ways that they've done it, right? And so we're gonna be one team. We're gonna bring everything together. We work as a team. We're gonna have the same. We're gonna operate within the same set of rules, and that really kind of spearheads how we're gonna operate moving forward. And so I believe that that's the first step in towards adoption. The second would be kind of updating and iterating that process and keeping them in the loop, one, and two, getting the feedback. And so you'd want to be able to ask them how things are going, what is useful for them, and what is most helpful when doing that, and then we can adjust when that happens. And so again, part of that is being able to talk openly about it, right? And so we can say, hey, rep, you have achieved, attainment quarter in, quarter out, and your forecast is phenomenal. Like your accuracy is within 2% of what you say. How do you do that? Tell me what you do that, how you do that, so that we can share your kind of tricks, right, across the rest of the organization, so that we can all succeed together. And so I think part of that is like having that relationship to be able to get the adoption that you want, and also share the good practices, the best practices.